In a minute, I'm gonna need a cinnamon roll, then an insulin shot to offset my diabetes.
David, I'm ashamed to say that I've watched entirely too much TikTok to know exactly what song that
As
is.
have I. And then, as we all know with my psychosis, I have to invent my own lyrics to songs. Because I heard cinnamon roll. Somebody went with that. I was like, well, I'm not going to point any fingers. But there is an overweight problem in this country. There is a weight problem in this country.
There is.
And if you're going to the oven to get a cinnamon roll, you should probably get your insulin shot ready because you don't want to go into a diabetic coma. Anyway, Dane, should we drop in?
Listen, the only thing worse than the obesity epidemic in this country is the epidemic of bipartisanship, which is
nice.
The main theme topic running through this episode, or I guess as you're seeing from the title when you clicked on this video or listened to this episode, I'm for the current thing. You know, you've probably seen that meme going around. You know, if it's stay in, save lives, or mask up, save lives, or get the jab, save lives, or put the Ukraine flag in your bio, save lives, here's my 47 preferred gender pronouns, because that also probably saved lives.
Save some of it for the podcast.
Anyway, you know, what I'm trying to say is that whole I'm for the current thing just isn't in the NPC popular consciousness. It also exists in politics, and it's called bipartisanship. And that's what we're going to talk about.
I like how you segued my fat joke into like politics. That's why we keep you on the payroll, right?
Yeah. That's why you pay me the big bucks. So that is what is going to be the topic of today's discussion in our regular segments. And with that little teaser, David, I'm ready to jump in. Are you?
Let's go.
Welcome to Weapons of Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 99, which can be found at wmdpodcast.com/99, any podcast catcher. You can catch the videos on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. And you can also link up with us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And if you're a follower of TikTok, as promised, a couple weeks late, but, sometimes when we promise things here, it takes a little bit of time with the production value and all that kind of stuff. But we have made do on our promises, and we are now getting clips of the videos up over on TikTok. So please, if you are there already, like and share those, duet them, stitch them, get us out there to a broader audience. And if you're not on TikTok, feel free to turn over all your information to the Chinese Communist Party just so you can get a little bit more Dane and David in your life.
That's the worst pitch I've ever heard in my life.
It's totally worth it.
Steal away all your freedoms. The exact opposite of what we argue for on this podcast. Just forego all those for a little entertainment. Some chicks shaking their tits around on Instagram and some politics.
You don't need that. Okay, you just need WMD podcast.
You're gonna need it.
Now, so on today's episode, as we alluded to before the jump in, today's general topic is bipartisanship. That's not going to play in every single one of our segments today. Culture Corner, Epstein didn't kill himself, and the main, but it will feature repeatedly. And so, with that being said, we'll jump into the first segment without much further ado. And in the Culture Corner this week, the Democrats are losing their stranglehold on the political culture that they have spent a lot of time, energy, and capital trying to convince everybody that they were the heir apparents to every single election cycle.
To say that they're strong enough to have a stranglehold would be probably too aggressive. They probably had like a pressure hold. You probably had like a gentle, like, is this good for you? Like, is this too much? Do you need me to pull back?
You're right. Generally speaking, their diets are way too heavy in soy, and their wrists entirely too limp to have
animal protein
much of a
punch through. To
have a stranglehold on anything. But nonetheless, they spend a lot of time and energy trying to convince you, the average voter, that don't even try to reach out to, a minority voting base, whether it be Hispanics, African Americans, and any other sort of segmented portion of society that they claim to have a monopoly control over politically, because that's just a waste of your time. And we, the Democrats, control it because, don't you know, we're the party of peace and love and logic and reason and not crazy insanity. And
we speak
yada,
for
yada,
them.
yada.
They don't need a voice. We speak for them.
But and I apologize if I mispronounce her name, I have heard it both ways. The spelling looks to me like Mayra. It's Mayra, but it might be Mayra. Mayra Flores, I'll just call her Representative Flores because she is going to the U.S. House, was just elected in
Which means flowers for all our non-Spanish speakers out there. Flowers. Flores.
She was just elected in a special runoff election. You might wonder, hey, I thought the midterms were in November. How could she already be elected? This was a special runoff election, which occurred just this last week. And she dethroned a Democratic incumbent. She ran as a Republican. She is a Mexican woman born on Mexican soil and will now be the first ever Mexican-born elected representative, and is also, again, since we're checking diversity boxes, again, she's also a woman.
They're going to celebrate them like they celebrated the Minnesota representative. That was
yes, I believe
Islamic. I believe.
I believe the Democrats, as they always like to say, they put principle over party, and their whole principle of diversity, inclusion, and equality. They're definitely going to throw a ticker tape parade for the first ever Mexican-born representative.
Yes, we did it. And she's female too, so like more women in power.
So many boxes,
like all the boxes. She's definitely not white, and she's a she.
I mean, unfortunately,
I haven't checked her Twitter yet, so I don't know if she prefers she, her, or it.
Unfortunately for them, I'm pretty sure she's married, so she is straight. She doesn't have the whole,
Fuck.
Yeah.
We almost had it. We almost had the trifecta. We'll get it next time, guys.
Anyway, here's the kicker. We're not, you probably have already picked this up through our sarcasm, but to not bury the real kicker to the whole story any further, yes, she was elected as a Republican.
She might be the brown face of white supremacy.
Ah, yes. Like they said about Larry Elder in California. Yeah. Yeah. Because as we've, said on podcasts in the past, that their whole banging of the drum from the political left about, diversity and inclusion and equality and all that kind of stuff, it has nothing to do with the, myriad of boxes they want somebody to check. It has everything to do with ideological monolithicness. I don't think that's a word, but a monolith being one thing unchanging, the same across the entire group.
It's close enough.
I'm going to pick better words eventually.
It's just as much of a word as addicting is, which we already had a word, which was addictive.
Listen.
So I'm going to go, if addicting is a word, then,
Sometimes I get a little too far out in front of my skis and I make things more complicated than they needed to be. A better word would be conformity.
There you go.
They want absolute 100% ideological conformity.
They're espousing inclusion, total inclusion of everybody until you disagree with them in the slightest. That seems counterintuitive.
Right.
Doesn't it? It's like, we're all one. And then you're like, well, I don't agree with this small principle. They're like, get the fuck out, you're the devil. We should kill you. Like, that doesn't seem very right.
So, because of her lack of ideological conformity, because don't you know, citizen, that as a good Mexican-born woman of color, she is supposed to agree with everything the Democrats have to say. I know. It's
woman of color. Like,
it's icky when the people on the left say it too.
It's very bureaucratic. It's very devoid of humanity.
Yeah,
she is a woman of color.
Well, that's the political left. Hello. Did you wake up? Are you just now
I just don't want that to be lost.
Rumpelstiltskin. I'm pretty sure that everybody who isn't indoctrinated into the leftist cult,
well, just in case they stumbled upon us, you're welcome here too. Your verbiage is really fucking off-putting. Is all I'm gonna say.
So anyway, obviously no ticker tape parades for Representative Flores because she doesn't have the proper ideological bent that the Party of Inclusion and Diversity would want. But what's a little bit kind of, I don't know if it's more important or if it's just a harbinger of the times in terms of the pendulum swinging back, is that, as I alluded to in the beginning, Democrats are always saying, we have this demographic on lock, so don't even try to pitch to it because we get all the Hispanic votes and we get all the Black votes and we get all the insert your other.
If you don't vote for me, you ain't Black.
David, I would say that that's racist, except for the fact that
but he's so not.
You said that you're quoting our sitting president. Is that Representative Flores flipped a blue district, which, get this, has been blue for a century. Now, I'm not one to oversell it in any...
Define century, Dane. Is that like 2 minutes?
Yeah, that's 2 minutes in the grand cosmic scheme of things. A little bit longer in real time, around 100 years. But
as we count them.
But the thing about Representative Flores flipping that, and again, being the first Mexican-born representative running as a Republican, and also happens to be a woman, and also happens to flip a century-long blue district, defeating a Democrat in the process, is that everything, as usual, that one side of the political spectrum tells you is the gospel truth, take it to the bank, don't question it ever. Times they are a-changin'. And they'll tell you that, when they get wiped out in this midterm election, that it's just because of angry white,
Russia.
And it's angry white voters, backlashing against, whatever. But really, it's the simple fact of what Flores said in her campaign repeatedly, is that in her culture, that values of family and hard work and integrity align, in her opinion, with the Republican Party more so than the Democrats. Because shocking, culture matters. She ran on a campaign of what was it? Like God, country, and family, or something like that, which is a very conservative, sloganeering.
Where'd you come up with that one, Harvey? We believe in Harvey Dent. Nice slogan.
But the point being that when you run away from the values of the people that you allegedly represent, and here I'm talking to the Democrats, don't be so shocked when those people who you claim to have a stranglehold on their votes actually don't vote for you and actually run against you and defeat you.
Well, the problem is, and this is what I said, when everybody was bitching about Trump getting elected, and they said that it was a Republican or it was a Russian infiltration of our own election system. And what I was saying back then was, when you say this, as we say on the podcast all the time, that door swings back twice as hard when you push it as hard as you can that way. So they said the Russian collusion was a thing. That's how Trump got elected. That's the only way he could have beaten Hillary Rodham Clinton, who was about as likable as shit on your shoe. Anywho, moving on. See how I did that, Dane? Shit on your shoe. Anywho.
I like it.
I'm a fucking genius.
I like it.
I'm a lyrical genius.
It's got a lot.
I'm a lyrical genius. Anyway,
Wheezy, he's coming for the crown.
F baby. The problem is when you do that, that leaves you open for the rebuttal the next time you win. So now what's going on? Trump comes out and says the election was stolen. I should have won by a huge margin. There's no one else that say got more votes. It was the best vote that ever happened. Anyway, after all of that, they storm January 6th and the big lie happens. Oh, the Democrats say it was the big lie. We won fair and square. We didn't do anything. Well, here's the problem. When you start questioning democracy on your side first, and then they question the democracy kind of in the same way that you did, and now you're saying that they're threatening democracy, it seems a little bit about, whataboutism. Like, well, we didn't do it as bad as they did. We didn't say that, democracy. No, you did. You said that Trump was the end of our democracy. And then you won. And then now you're saying that January 6th was the greatest threat to our democracy. I don't know. I thought 2 planes flying into our World Trade Center was the biggest threat of our democracy, and that's why we had to give up all of our freedoms. I don't know. I'm just trying to keep track of what the biggest threat to democracy is. Because if you say it's the biggest threat of democracy, I tend to have a memory longer than a fucking goldfish. And I just want to keep track of what is the actual threat to democracy. Is it Republicans, or is it Democrats, or is it Russians, or is it Ukraine? Is it Lizzo? I don't know. Who's the biggest threat to democracy? Let me know.
Well, David, listen, what I've gathered is the biggest threat to democracy is kind of like this is the most important election of our lives. It's just going to happen every 2 to 4 years. Yeah, I'm going to submit something to you, dear listener, viewer, and broader audience members of the human family. There's that old saying that the only 2 things that are certain in life are death and taxes. Well, I'm going to add 2 more things to that list. There's 4 things that are certain in this life: death and taxes, but also the fact that whatever doesn't align with your political preferences is a threat to our democracy, and that every single election is the most important election of your life. You'll hear it forever. So either the last time they said it, it wasn't as big a deal as they said it in both contexts, the democracy attacking or the election. And they were just being very boy who cried wolfish. Or they're full of shit this time, in which case, yeah, no, that's always the correct answer.
It seems as though it cuts one way and not the other for both parties.
So moving on to the next section of
which is
Epstein did not kill himself.
Epstein didn't kill himself. We're going to come up with bumpers eventually. Again, production, this, that, and the other. It doesn't happen as fast as we want it, but we're not going to deprive you of our goddamn ideas.
David's going to keep you
abreast,
essentially bumpered with his, voiceovers,
at least a thigh,
and vocal talents in general.
See what I did there, Dave?
I did. Yeah,
I'm a drumstick guy.
It was nice.
I'm dark meat.
It was very good. Very proud of you. In the Epstein did not kill himself section, we have a few examples of why bipartisanship is nothing at all to be applauded. Yet, despite every time it happens, we're supposed to just get out the confetti and celebrate that government is, quote unquote, getting something done.
So adults could agree to disagree.
So let's talk about what the government has got done in the not too distant past.
I prefer to call it done did.
So we have, and I'm just going to give you just a few because the Senate votes kind of capture it. I mean, you have the House votes as well on each one of these bills because Schoolhouse Rock kids, how does a bill become a law? It does require voting in support of from both houses, but I think the Senate votes amply get across our point of bipartisanship and where that's gotten us. We have the Patriot Act, which was voted in the Senate 98-1. And what did we wind up with the Patriot Act? Well, not only a wholesale writing off.
Goddamn dippity is what I call it, Dane. I can't even get a sunburn nowadays. I can walk outside and give my social security card to multiple people. I have copies. If you want one, go to WND podcast /David social security card. Print one out yourself. I'll just hand it out. Nothing bad will happen to me now. All right?
I have no idea how that's connected to the Patriot Act.
I did this a little bit behind you.
Oh, okay.
Because the Patriot Act makes us safer. Like we can't even, no one can take anything from us anymore. Because we gave away all of our rights to the government. They can see every aspect of our life. So, they don't know exactly what we're doing at all times.
They're saving everything all the time. Well, so the Senate voted 98-1 to pass the Patriot Act. And what did we get with that? Not only a wholesale writing of the Fourth Amendment out of the Constitution, but we got, the great outcomes such as, 4-year-olds winding up on no-fly lists or, civil asset forfeiture exploding
we didn't need that
after the passage of the Patriot Act. Another one that we have as an example of great government bipartisanship would be the repeated, and again, I'm just going to refer to this broadly because this is passed every year as part of the defense bill, the NDAA, which stands for the National Defense Authorization Act, always passed on bipartisan grounds because don't you know, citizen, we can't starve our soldiers for resources. despite the fact that we spend about as much on our military as the next like 11 countries combined. But what is some little sneaky language they snuck into the Patriot Act during the Obama administration? Just this minor little thing called the codification of the government's ability to indefinitely detain you without a trial, writing due process completely out of the Constitution. Or how about the TARP relief bailouts in 2008, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, which was meant to take your tax dollars after the banks destroyed the economy and did what? Use your tax dollars to bail out the banks. That was voted in favor in a 74.
Hey, that's trickled down economics 101. Okay? You got to bail out the banks so the people that created the problem in the first place can still give money to the people that need it the most, but they won't give it to them. That's how that works, Dane.
Yeah, I believe that's the line from the bipartisan voters in this Senate vote was 74-25. So, not exactly 98-1, but those are pretty bipartisan numbers in terms of both Republican and Democratic support. And I guess we'll just polish this one off with the most recent one, the CARES Act, the thing that couldn't give two shits about you.
I believe we have an episode called The CARES Act Could Care Less. And if you want to learn more about that, please go back to the episode, whatever the number was.
The CARES Act, which piled another $2 trillion onto the federal debt and is largely responsible for the massive inflation we're currently experiencing, in addition to other massive economic disruptions, was voted 96-0. That's right, nobody voted against the CARES Act. And so, when Republicans try to say, and again, yes, the Democrats are in power now, and Biden's calling the shots with his EOs and all that kind of stuff. Don't forget that a large percentage of the bailouts occurred under Trump with full Republican support. And so what have we learned from this brief 20-plus year trot across history is that bipartisanship is really just nothing but the stupid party and the evil party agreeing on how to fuck over the American people more efficiently.
I like how you left that open-ended. Like you didn't define which one was the stupid one and which one was the dumb party. I
stupid party or evil party. Stupid and dumb would be a bit redundant.
I mean, yeah. Would it though? I feel like both those parties are redundant anyway.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that firstly, let's track back to that Fourth Amendment. Let's be honest. It was the appendix of the human body, which is our American Constitution. We didn't need that one. What was the Fourth Amendment? Off the top of your head, do you know? Oh shit! Did I stunt the Schwab over here?
No unreasonable searches and seizures.
There we go.
Jesus Christ!
God, you don't need that. Every search and seizure is reasonable.
Oh my God!
You've got 2 testicles. I'm going to search you. You're black. I'm going to search you. Whoa, that doesn't sound so nice, does it? Interesting. All I'm saying is let's get rid of that. We didn't need that 4th one anyway. So sometimes some good does come from, just governance, bipartisanship, hacking away at your rights. That's all I'm saying.
All right. So with that being said, we're on to the main part of the episode, which unlike episode 98, we're actually too quick enough to actually give you a full main show treatment.
Wow.
Look at us go.
Listen.
We're getting this thing down.
You're welcome.
Almost at a century in terms of episodes.
We've almost got this thing cracked. It only took us 99 tries before this one. So
much like our short trot across history in the Epstein didn't kill himself segment, we have another incident.
Oh God. Sucks recording this live.
One of these days, you'll spit it out.
Right in the
instance.
There you go.
An instance. Another instance. Good job, Dane.
You got it.
Sometimes I get my words all mixed up.
Good Deadpool.
Another instance of bipartisanship is the recent Senate agreement. Now, again, this has not been voted on in terms of actually becoming a law yet, but the Senate has agreed with the help of, and we're going to get to these 10 names, which shall go down in infamy.
Remain nameless.
And hopefully voted out of office because they're all pieces of shit, compromising scumbags. We'll get to that list here in a second. But the Senate, with the help of 10 Republicans, has agreed in principle to terms of new gun control legislation.
Oh, perfect.
Because again, as the show title suggests, they are in favor of the current thing.
Well, what Dane meant to say about those 10 representatives is that they're a bunch of humans that are trying to do their best. And by God, if your rights get in the way of them doing their best, they're going to try to maintain your rights as much as they can, but then they're eventually not. But what he meant was they're really good humans that are just trying their best.
No, I meant exactly what I said. Fuck all of them with something hard and sandpapery.
Well, good.
So
I would clarify that.
One of the key, and there's a lot, I mean, listen, you all have watched TikTok. You have listened to this episode enough to know how I personally feel about the whole gun control debate. And that is the negotiations are over because we don't negotiate with terrorists. We gave them an inch a long time ago, and they're already on like mile 12 with that inch. And so this idea
if only that worked in other aspects of life.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't be so nice.
That because of that, there is no more negotiation going on. Again, these politicians, these bureaucrats, these people who claim to, with their feelings, override our inalienable rights, are no longer entitled to polite debate. They're no longer entitled to reasonable, rational discussion because they've never given us that. And so, no, I'm done compromising. I'm done hearing anything that they have to say, and that their little words on pieces of paper mean nothing to any of us.
Let me pump the aggressive.
No, I'm full on.
I know you are. I'm going to pump it for you.
I'm staying on the throttle.
I'm pumping. I'm pumping away. I think the fluid might be out. I don't know. I'm going to put my hazards on. All I'm saying is, if you think we're being too verbose,
we're not.
Would you abide me some of my time, and then I'll give you the rest of my remaining time? Thank you, sir. If you think we're being
proper amounts of verbose.
I'll wait.
My apologies. No.
I'll wait.
Sorry. I'm a little rattled. Riled up.
I'm pulling back on the reins, and you're still going.
I know.
Anywho, just in case you think we're being overly dramatic here, do remember that agents of the government, i.e. police, showed up at the Uvalde crime scene as the crime was still happening and waited roughly an hour, 47 minutes, which sounds so much better than an hour, right? Because they're very precise with the 47 minutes. They held people outside 47 minutes until, standers-by that had children in the school broke in and didn't get shot by the police that were trying to keep them from it. Anyway, so agents of the government were actively preventing people from saving their own children and did not reprimand or subdue the suspect to protect other American citizens. So when you're saying all these things, that seems to get lost in the ether out here of trying to claim your weapons of war. What Dane is really saying is he's coming from that place of it's irrational to think that your government is going to come to save you, which is why you need the weaponry that you need to protect yourself. Dane, I alleviate my time to you after this.
So, apologize for the rant, not in terms of what I said. I stand by that all day and twice on Sundays. I apologize only because, it kind of took us off the tracks. That's supposed to be David's job. David is the one that's supposed to take us off on tangents.
You're really good at pointing fingers. I like to keep it
but
loud.
I did it this time.
Spunky.
My bad.
I'm a spaz. What can I say?
So the worst part.
It's like 3 shots at Lizzo. This whole episode.
That was a subtle one. I didn't even catch that
you
one.
didn't, but you don't appreciate my work.
The worst part about this bipartisan agreement in the Senate, in addition to the fact that, again, it's just more gun control legislation, period, and that's bad enough, is the agreement in principle to including red flag law provisions, taking what already exists in some states, which has not had the intended effect, and putting it on the national level. And for those of you that are not fully aware of what red flag laws do, why they're so constitutionally, and just as a matter of general principles of freedom and liberty, why they're so dubious, is because much like the Patriot Act wrote the Fourth Amendment right out of the Constitution, a red flag law is pretty much just say due process. The fuck is that? Who needs that? But just a quick little refresher on what exactly is being given up there. So due process is actually something that's relatively unique to the Western world in the sense that if the government is going to bring criminal charges against you, they need to A, tell you exactly what you did wrong, give you a precise criminal charge, and this usually either happens with a grand jury indictment or they'll file an information against you. In either case, they tell you right up front, here's the criminal law that you broke, and here's why we are threatening to take away your liberty. And then you go through an entire procedural process through the courts that is, at least in principle, supposed to guarantee you a right to a fair trial. And then at the very end of that, you get to be judged by a jury of your peers, your fellow citizens. The government doesn't get to play judge, jury, and executioner. They need to convince 6 to 12, depending on different rules in the states, 6 to 12 of your peers that what you did was not only wrong, but that you should be punished for it. And that is, in a nutshell, what due process is. And as for granted as we take that here in the United States, that is relatively unique to the world. And despite what Democrats would tell you about how shitty and terrible this country is, a large part of the reason why people come to the United States from all over the world is, for as flawed as our legal system is, and for as flawed of a country as we are, just like all the rest of them, our legal protections are almost second to none around the world. You can't expect something like due process in China or North Korea or Saudi Arabia, etc.
What are you talking about, Dane? Due process doesn't exist in Saudi Arabia? You mean to tell me in 2022, Yemen does not uphold the rights of its citizens? You mean to tell me Xi is a dictator and not a president?
Pootie Tang, a little rough over there.
Pootie Tang was not elected by a democracy.
No.
You're a fake and a phony. He doesn't know. He doesn't know what he's talking about, guys. Stop listening to the podcast. We died at 99. Here we go.
So now that you have a general conception of why due process is important, and it's not just a catchy little buzzword that politicians throw around to, get your feathers all ruffled up, let me juxtapose that with what a red flag law does. And to harken back to one example of bipartisanship from our Epstein segment is what, which one was it? It wasn't not the...
Maybe of surface. You're using...
The facilitation of civil asset forfeiture with the Patriot Act. So what civil asset forfeiture does is says, I think that this property that you own was involved in some sort of crime, so we're going to take it first and you get the process later.
We just did to Russia when they invaded Ukraine. Like, we just attacked all their oligarchs because they had to be in league with Pootie Tang. So we seized their yachts.
Well, I mean...
We seized their assets. We froze all
not
their
just
stuff.
the oligarchs. I mean, nationwide sanctions, which attacks the innocent civilians who clearly had nothing to do with it.
Because they were involved as well.
Right.
That clearly had nothing to do with it, to hearken what you just said. They're just as guilty as guilty people, but they weren't guilty.
Which, by the way, that's a good point. And I would like to bring this up to all the Ukraine flag bio people on Twitter. Exactly what you're cheering your government to do to other people around the world is exactly what they will do to you here at home. And in many cases already are. So, be a little more careful with your bedfellows. But back to the red flag laws and why they're so problematic, juxtaposed with what due process is supposed to provide you in terms of protection. Much like civil asset forfeiture, red flag laws, specifically speaking on one specific type of property, guns, says we take the guns first, you get your process later. And not only do they not have to be specific, again, remember the aspects of due process. Specific. You were charged with a specific criminal act. You knew exactly what was being brought against you in terms of what law you allegedly violated. Not with red flag laws. All it takes is a simple accusation from And again, here's another key difference. You don't get told right up front
but it's
exactly what criminal law you broke. This complaint can come from somebody completely anonymous. So your neighbor next door who just doesn't like your face can call and say,
he's got a bad face.
Hey,
he doesn't deserve a gun.
I think this guy has too many guns. I think you should take it away from him. Or your neighbor next door is a purple-haired screecher who likes to take her 5-year-old son to have put $5 bills in transvestite strippers' G-strings, and you think twice about that, and they don't agree with you on that, so they think you should lose your guns. Or, dare I say, your white supremacist neighbor, if you happen to be black, who doesn't like you because you're black, says, I think this guy's a little unhinged. I think you should take his gun. You see how bad this can get? When just somebody, and again, these complaints are anonymous. You don't know who made the red flag complaint against you. You have no ability to redress any of this. You have no charges brought against you other than some abstract, I think this person's a danger to the community, and you lose your right to defend yourself. Now, what happens in that last example I gave you, if your white supremacist neighbor, as the black neighbor or some other minority neighbor that he doesn't like because, again, he's a white supremacist, once he gets you disarmed, he knows you're disarmed, you have no ability to defend yourself. What if he chooses to act on his white supremacy, his bigotry? I guess we're just all supposed to accept that because red flag laws are supposed to make us safer, which they don't because, again, they've been in effect in many different states and they don't stop mass shootings and all they do is completely destroy due process. But that is the bipartisanship that Republican senators came to terms with Democratic senators on agreeing to in principle. Are you happy?
Oh, I get to talk now?
David, you get to talk now.
Awesome. I've been waiting for about 20,000 minutes now.
Sorry, it takes a lot of explaining.
Oh, definitely. Yep. Anyway, and if you fell for that, the red flag, that seems like a reasonable thing. Like, don't feel bad. I did too. Like, when you think about it logically, it's like, well, what would they really red flag you for? It's like, oh, because of our current circumstance, if you have psychiatric meds given to you, I'd imagine that would be given a red flag. Because you think of it as
an ex-girlfriend that doesn't like you.
You think of it as a rational individual. You're like, well, they wouldn't red flag you for like blowing a stop sign, or they wouldn't red flag you for like talking too loud at a baseball game. But once they pass the bill's passed. So now you can red flag law. And then they're going to they can change what a red flag law really pertains to. So that's the insidious part. Once you give them an inch, again, Dane, they will take a mile and they'll take your arm and they'll take your leg too, to make sure that you're absolutely dependent upon them at all costs. So what Dane was saying is that if you let the red flag law in, as reasonable as it might sound, right now, that red flag, like the Patriot Act, like, yeah, you can check emails. Because we're like, they'd only check the emails of terrorists. And even if they check my emails, I've got nothing to hide. What about that fucking naked picture of your ex-girlfriend from 13 years ago? You want them to see that? Well, what if she was 17? Oh, now you have child porn. Despite the fact that you were 17 at that, now you have child porn on your email. You don't think that you have anything to hide there? See, it switches. Like, just because you're okay with it today does not mean that it's going to stay okay tomorrow. And that's what Dane's arguing. It's like, if you crack that door, they're going to kick it wide open. And that's basically what they're going to do. Like, if you give them that freedom of yours, they're going to take that freedom and every other freedom that pertains to it. So that's why I feel like my pants were caught a little, because today I was agreeing with somebody like, yeah, red flag laws, I'm okay with you back checking. I'm okay with, like, if you have a red flag, I guess that's my concession. Well, there's no concession in this because I didn't do anything wrong. Why should my rights get infringed upon for not doing anything wrong?
Which sounds a lot like what the regime apologists said about the Patriot Act, right? If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. It's the exact same argument that's being made here. Nobody would ever call a complaint on me for a red flag. I'm a completely normal person. I don't get on Facebook and rant about how much I hate the government like Dane does. They'll never come for me. I'm not suspicious in any way. I have just a little, a little revolver that I use just for personal home defense. And if, somebody bad wants to hurt me, that's all I use it for. I don't go out shooting. I only have one gun. Like, I'm completely normal. And then, I don't know, you're at a pool party and your neighbor, you pee in your neighbor's pool or something and they find out about it. And the next thing you know, you got the cops coming to take your gun away.
And just in case you think we're making this shit up, we gave them all of our rights in the Patriot Act. Hey, Dane, what's that statistic of how many terrorist plots they've stopped since we gave them all of our rights? Did they stop any of these school shootings that we heard of?
I don't think any.
They didn't. No, they stopped one. They stopped one initially, and then it turned out that it was the FBI that
was doing it.
That turned a fucking possible person into a terrorist and then arrested him and said, look what we did. We did it.
It's like that meme with the surprise face and it says, and the headline is like, FBI stops FBI terror plot.
It's like you went to the fucking local grocery store, bought a fish, walked back out to your pond, put the fish on the end of your fucking hook of your fishing pole and went, I got him. You didn't catch that fish. They created that fish. That's all I'm saying. It's like they don't care to stop the thing that they're telling you that they need this thing to stop. They're just concerned with a little bit more control over your life. That's all I'm saying.
So, on to that list that I promised, the list that will go down in infamy. These are the 10 Republican senators who sided with all of the Democrats in the Senate in order to get this bipartisan piece of shit done. And the reason why 10 is important is because 10 gets them over the magical number of 60, which makes this filibuster proof.
10's over 60?
Which means if a Rand Paul, say for example, in the Senate, would like to filibuster to make sure that this thing doesn't get passed, he can't anymore because these 10 turncoats on the Republican side sided with Democrats and agreed in principle to this legislation, which includes red flag laws. And those 10 are Senator John Cornyn from Texas, Tom Tillis from North Carolina, Richard Burr, also from North Carolina. So both North Carolina senators, just throw the whole fucking state away. Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, shocker there. Roy Blunt from Missouri, Rob Portman from Ohio, Mitt Romney, shocker again, from Utah, Bill Cassidy, from Louisiana, Susan Collins from Maine, and Pat Toomey from Pennsylvania.
I've heard a lot of these names before. It seems as though these guys are long-standing representatives for their states, as though they might be a part of the quote-unquote swamp that we were talking about under the President Trump regime. So, I mean, if we believe Tulsi Gabbard is what she said, is that the Senate, the House of Representatives, Congress is basically high school part 2. Why would they turn coat, Dane?
Well,
why would they? Go ahead.
I mean, why would they turn coat? It's because they're just as much apparatchiks of the regime as anybody on the Democrat side. And the sooner that Republican voters wake up and realize that, maybe these 10 fuckheads will be voted out of office. And maybe any number of the other ones that, maybe we're close to, but at least didn't join this ignominious list, can also be voted out because there is no party fighting for your rights up in D.C. That's for damn sure. And as we said earlier, when the stupid and the evil party come together, that's called bipartisanship. And in this case, it completely destroys any of your constitutional rights to due process when it comes to guns.
And again, not to beat this dead horse that we keep smashing over the head. It's like, what is the definition of insanity, Dane? Please, one more time.
And the same thing again and again, expecting different results.
And you keep voting bipartisan. And when these two fucking shitstorms come together, they create a turd hurricane that takes away your rights and pushes us further down the path of least progression in this country because it turns us on ourselves again. So, again, I'm not saying you have to vote third party. I'm not saying you have to do anything else. I'm just saying just don't buy it hook, line, and sinker that your state representative or the person that has the R or the D in front of their name that makes you feel more safe at night has your best interest in mind. And that's like thinking that like a professional athlete caught a touchdown for you. That's fucking ridiculous. Like, they're there for themselves. They're happy you root for them, but if you don't root for them, they could give a fuck until enough of us don't root for them anymore to where they don't get into office. That's the whole point. Like, if you want the same outcomes again and again, and I'll put it to you, dear listener, these people aren't the insane ones. You're the insane one. You people that keep voting these third, fourth, fifth, 20th term senators into office, what do you think they're doing up there? They haven't fixed anything for you. All you do is complain about the things that they're not doing. But you vote them back in time and time again. So what do you expect? Again, it goes from Uvalde to voting to here. You have to fix the things in your own home first, then your own block, then your own community, then your own city, then your own county, then your own state, then your own country. That's where it comes from. If you think you're going to get Mitch McConnell to vote in your interest as an individual, okay, cool. Buy some stock in landing raspberries on the moon and what is it called? Terraforming the moon with raspberry humans. Do that. Because you've got just as much chance of the other one as the other one. That's all I'm saying.
No, I mean, what he's saying there is not even particularly controversial. I mean, it's just simple logic and numbers, right? Your senator or even your representative, who is at least closer to you than your U.S. senator, they represent hundreds of thousands of people, depending on the size of the district that you're in. Well, then your state representative sitting in for us in Tallahassee, or you for whatever your state capital is, represents far less people. And then your county commissioner, even less than that. And then your city councilman, even less than that. And your school board chairman, even less than that. So the further or the closer you get to yourself, your physical geographic location, the more control you have over that elected official. The more you federalize, the more you allow these dipshits who have to respond to millions of people, the far less likely that your individual interests are going to be represented. And that's why we always argue on this podcast for more local control over as many things as possible. Which really, when it comes down to it, there is hardly anything that needs to be in the federal purview. You know, outside of, and again, this is me taking, this is me putting my minarchist hat on in terms of, oh, well, you got to have a little bit of a state, whatever. That's dubious. But point is, maybe you need the national government for the military, and maybe you need it for
national crises.
Interstate infrastructure. Maybe those two things. But what has the federal government done?
Couldn't give me crisis. Couldn't give me crisis.
Yeah, whatever. You can have crisis, whatever. I'm pretty sure the states can handle their own crises if they're not spending or if they're not sending billions of dollars to the federal government every day in the form of taxes.
Katrina.
But anyway, not to get too far off track, the federal government doesn't need to do hardly anything. Almost everything in your daily life can happen at the local level. And the more local it is, the more control you have over it, the more responsive your elected officials have to be to you individually. And that's just a matter of common sense based on how many voices they have to hear at any given time. But let me give you one silver lining in this whole thing is that SCOTUS actually last year in a case called Coniglia versus Strom actually ruled.
Come on.
What's funny?
Oh, his name SCOTUS with Scaglia and what? Huh? One more time.
SCOTUS is the Supreme Court of the United States.
You know what it sounds like?
You've never heard the acronym SCOTUS before?
I've heard it. Yeah. No, it's just a bad acronym because it sounds like it sounds.
It doesn't sound anything like scrotum.
It sounds exactly like scrotum.
It does not.
It sounds exactly like scrotum. And then you said the two fucking fake names after it, and I just lost my stuff. I'm sorry, Dane. I didn't mean to head your point off, but
Jesus Christ. Anyway,
what did scrotum do?
The Supreme Court of the United States.
There we go, scrotum.
They just ruled on a case last year. So 2021, this is some ancient Supreme Court case that has no bearing on today, but just last year, and you'll never guess, they ruled in a not too common 9-0. Even the liberal justices ruled that red flag laws, at least in the context of the way it was applied in that case, is unconstitutional.
Well, that means that Obama's judges ruled against it.
Yes. Not just those terrible Republican, going to take us to the Handmaid's Tale Society Republican justices. No, even the super left Sotomayor and what's the other lady's name? Kagan and Breyer. And yes, all those liberal justices, even they ruled that a red flag law in the Caniglia versus Strom case was unconstitutional. So the question becomes, in light of that, how are politicians going to get around us? Going to get around this? Well, remember what we said last week about that whole mentality of I have my pin in my phone that Obama was, famous for quipping that he doesn't give a shit what the legislature has to say. He's just going to rule by.
You didn't build that.
He's going to rule by kingly dictate. That's exactly what Biden can do. Just like he did with the emergency eviction moratorium during COVID, or the COVID jabs themselves, or as the government did with the Patriot Act, all they have to do is declare an emergency. And an emergency allows you to get away with pretty much damn near anything you want, Constitution be damned. So who knows? I mean, I know that Thomas Massie is going to put up a hell of a fight in the House to make sure this doesn't happen and get into the final draft of the law. And at least we have the Supreme Court not too recently, or not too long ago, last year, saying that this is unconstitutional. So maybe this can be stopped, but regardless of whether it is or not, don't let the bipartisan bullshit be lost on you.
If the Supreme Court has come out and said this is not constitutional, and that's one of the three heads of our government, our governing body of this United States, shouldn't the other two bodies take heed from that? Shouldn't they give it the due respect that they come up with? Instead of keep pushing their agenda? Shouldn't they take a step back?
Not to get too much into the weeds, but what's going to happen is the legislators, and this is why Congress is packed both in the House and the Senate with lawyers, is they are going to...
those fucking people.
They're going to look at the Caniglia versus Strom case, and they're going to say, okay, what factors were at issue in the red flag law? I forget which state it originated from, but what factors were at issue in that state law that they ruled unconstitutional, and how can we tweak it just enough in this legislation to not run afoul of the legal analysis of Caniglia to make sure that we still get our red flag law, but hopefully the next time, if this is challenged in the Supreme Court, which it undoubtedly will be, that the court actually rules in our favor. And something tells me that coming out of a Democrat-controlled House and Senate and signed into law by a Democrat president, that maybe, just maybe, those Democratic justices on the Supreme Court might change their tune in terms of if that law gets challenged and say, it's not so much. But the good news is the Supreme Court is still majority, at least Republican appointees. That often means nothing. But at least with a majority there, they won't get the 5 votes necessary to say that the Congress's red flag law is constitutional.
And we hope. And you fuckers wonder why people hate lawyers. Anyway, Dane, where can people find this episode?
They can find this episode at wmdpodcast.com/99. Any podcast app, just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. This episode, well, you already know that it's dropping at 6 a.m. on Wednesday morning because you wouldn't be hearing it unless That time has already come and passed, so I don't know why I'm explaining that, but it's here on Wednesday.
We're giving you a little behind the scenes, apparently.
And then you can also find it on any of the video platforms, Rumble, Odyssey, YouTube, and then also please check out the clips of this episode over on TikTok, but also link up with us on Twitter and Instagram. Like, subscribe, share anywhere you find us.
Message us, get in contact
do
with
all that
us.
stuff.
We're trying to form a community.
Come over to wmdpodcast.com. And then go to the Support Our Work tab and support us at a monthly
Or
amount
come over to our
like.
tab and tell us that we stink and our farts are
please
smelling.
tell us you like us. But with that being said, I hope, ladies and gentlemen, that we have amply made our point that when you hear the word bipartisan, your ears should immediately perk up and you should immediately think, how am I getting fucked today? Because that's all government really specializes in at the end of the day. And when both parties agree on how to do it, you should be concerned.
Muy peligroso. Con cuidado.
Sí.
Otherwise, stay safe. More importantly, stay free.